When we look at IoT devices, the security in those devices is probably not where we have come to expect security in some of our other devices. So when you look at your laptops, your computers, and the antivirus and the secure updates, we had, our 90s and the 2000s where we had a lot of antivirus. It's not that that's a problem that's solved, but we have these computing devices that are proliferating. So we're seeing more and more of these devices come into our home, right? Those devices have CPU, they have memory, they have a network stack, and when you brought them into your network, you gave them networking credentials that they can use to operate on your network and potentially on the internet at large. So when you've done that, what have you engaged with from a security perspective, right? There are not a lot of people that are updating firmware in their light bulbs, right? It's just not one of those things. I have trouble remembering, when it's time to go and replace the batteries in my smoke detectors. And what we want to do with IoT devices, these are things that are connected, so why can't we get those updates and have that happen without me having to be engaged in it, right? If they're that smart, then they should be able to get a secure update. And these are some of the things, when we look at kind of tackling the IoT and what that means, there are a number of groups that are trying to do this, right? And there are a number of great vendors that are creating products and manufacturers that are creating products that have security in there. It's not that it's so dire that nobody has a solution here, but the trick is that if you buy a solution from one vendor and they don't have the IoT device that you want in their product line, you're buying another one, right? And so you have this proliferation of vendors and devices that don't communicate with each other. If they can't communicate with each other, they can't communicate securely with each other. This is where one of the big kind of a crux of this issue comes in, where we want to say, let's get a standard for secure device interoperability so that as a consumer, I know that when I go buy a device, it's going to work with the stuff I already have at home, and it's going to work securely with that. And so security isn't the only issue, and trying to tackle security on its own is probably a losing battle. Same with interoperability. You don't want to tackle interoperability on its own. You want to tie that in and say, no, I want secure interoperability. I want to do both of these things and be able to bring that in. So how do you do it, right? And this is where standards organizations come in, and we're going to look in this session at a number of different standards organizations, but we're going to look at one in particular, the Open Connectivity Foundation, which has not just a specification that, hey, here's a document. Would anybody read this document if you're an entrepreneurial company, right? You might not, right? And yes, it may mean that you could be interoperable with a number of large vendors and manufacturers that are making those products, but it's still, you're probably on a time to market and how do I make this for the least cost possible track, right? And that trajectory, that's where the Open Connectivity Foundation said, all right, we're not just going to build this specification, we're also going to build an open source implementation called IoTivity. So everything that we talk about in the specification, we actually build, and we built it for everybody and said, here it is. It's in a Linux Foundation project, it's open source, you can take it and you can plug that into your device. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking at this, you're like, you may not have a cryptographer on staff, right? But we've had some of the best cryptographers from some of the largest manufacturers getting together for 5 years, hashing out what the best security can be. You don't probably have a security engineer on staff. You may not have a network engineer on staff. You may not even be writing your own code. And so we've built all of that and said, here's 85% of your entire device. All you have to do is put an application layer on top of it, and your new IoT device can go out in the market, and you have interoperability with a number of other devices, right? So there's 450 other manufacturers that are engaged in this initiative, and this is one of the ways that we actually solve this IoT bear that we're facing.